Hello and welcome. This is everything you need to know for Week 12 fantasy football. We'll cover everything we saw in Week 11 and what it means going forward. All right, we are going to get started here with the 5 biggest stories coming out of Week 11. Number 1, the New York Jets, after getting blown out at Buffalo, predictably, Zach Wilson inept again, predictably, they finally, at long last, make the move. After 10 games, they bench Zach Wilson for Tim Boyle. Now, if they had someone better, I think this should have happened earlier. They have been incompetent at getting better quarterbacks into their room. They have been stubborn, and they're left with Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle is 29 years old, played at UConn, Eastern Kentucky, went undrafted, has never really been good. Even going back to that time in college, was never even good. So I'm excited that they made the change. I'm not sure it's going to make a difference. Evan, what did you think of the Jets' decision to finally bench Zach Wilson, who, by the way, will be not even the backup. He'll be the number 3 quarterback on Sunday. Trevor Siemian will be the number 2.
Yep, they just signed Trevor Siemian to the 53. I mean, I think that Tim Boyle is not good. As you mentioned, he wasn't even good in college, where in 3 years at Connecticut, he completed 48.4% of his passes. Oh my God, he had 1 touchdown and 13 interceptions. Yeah, that's not good. So I mean, I think we'll probably see Trevor Siemian sooner rather than later. Who's to say that Trevor Siemian isn't a better option than Tim Boyle? We've seen in the NFL Trevor Siemian have, stretches of success. So I mean, I think we could see Trevor Siemian as early as like halftime of Week 12.
Yeah, and I would have much more optimism for Siemian than Tim Boyle. As it stands right now, my take is that this is not really an upgrade for Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall at all, but maybe just a change will give them some life there. I mean, Zach Wilson had 6 passing touchdowns on 382 dropbacks. I mean, Tommy DeVito has 6 passing touchdowns on 114 dropbacks. Just completely inept. That is the Friday game this week. By the way, we'll get our first look at Tim Boyle and the new look Jets. All right, let's move to some sad news, Evan. Second biggest story of the week comes out of Cincinnati. So before this game on Thursday, this was like maybe an hour or two before the game, video emerges, if you guys are on Twitter, you undoubtedly saw it, of Joe Burrow with some kind of like brace or wrap around his right throwing hand. I didn't really think too much of it. I thought he played well in the first half, or at least fine. Then he lands on it, can't throw the football. Turns out he's out for game, out for season with a wrist injury as Bengals fall to 5-5 in that loss to the Ravens. I mean, just brutal loss for the Bengals to lose Joe Burrow here. They're still in their Super Bowl window, but the Joe Burrow contract is kicking in now. I mean, cap hits are going to be $30 million in 2024, and then in 2025 it goes to $46 million. I mean, they're not going to be able to retain this team with those cap hits. So just a brutal injury for Bengals and Joe Burrow. They will now go to Jake Browning. Jake Browning is a 2019 undrafted free agent out of Washington, got picked up by the Vikings, bounced around there, has never started an NFL game. Evan, what did you think of the Bengals loss up there with the Ravens and the outlook for them going forward with Jake Browning at quarterback?
Feels like their season is almost certainly over. Number one, their defense has been really beatable, so they can't be a team like the Browns where they kind of win games with their defense entirely, and then try to play keep away on offense. Jake Browning, I mean, he was a 4-year starter at a Power 5 school and didn't get drafted.
Yeah,
that's not a good sign. He's like a little weak-armed scrambler. We've seen a little bit of him so far. I think he's got 15 pass attempts, and he hasn't looked very good. So this is big trouble for Jamar Chase, big trouble for the tight ends, Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins. I mean, I don't even know if he's gotten over it with his hamstring. So they're in big trouble.
I didn't think that the moment looked too big for Jake Browning. Like, he came in and he played with confidence. He played reasonably. I don't want to say Jamar Chase is dead, but obviously if we were drafting today and Jake Browning was the quarterback, Jamar Chase would probably be something closer to a 2nd or 3rd round pick, not a top 3 pick like he's been in rest of season top 150 like he was before the year. Steelers, Jaguars are the next two games for Jake Browning. Certainly not an easy spot for him.
Nope.
Third biggest story, Ravens. So Ravens score 30 points. Again, this is the fifth straight game that they've scored 30 points in that Thursday win over the Bengals. But this was a bittersweet win for them. One of the more valuable players on the team. And honestly, I think one of the more valuable skill players in the entire league, Mark Andrews, sustains an ankle injury and is done for the season. They have Isaiah Likely. They have Charlie Kolar. But man, this is a really bad injury for the Ravens and all fantasy owners, including myself, who was taking Mark Andrews in the third round a lot during draft season. Evan, what is your reaction to the Mark Andrews injury?
Yeah, cracked fibula with damage to his ankle ligaments. You could tell right away. Did you see the play on which he got injured? I mean, it was that was painful to watch. Isaiah Likely has played a lot when Mark Andrews has been out of the lineup or off the field, but has drawn almost, I think, maybe one target in those two exposures. We saw him last year. I mean, he could play. He commanded 60 targets and had 36 catches last year. Did Isaiah Likely? Looks like a wide receiver. Was really productive in college at Coastal Carolina, but he has not drawn targets under the new OC Todd Monken. Yeah. It's a small sample. But I don't know I kind of don't know what to think yet about Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, I think he can play. He has shown in the preseason. He has shown in the regular season. You don't have the kind of games that he's had in the preseason and the regular season without being able to play. However, Mark Andrews has missed all or most of 4 games over the last 2 seasons. He airballed. Did Isaiah Likely against the Bengals on Thursday. In that first game, week 1, Mark Andrews missed. Likely caught just 1 pass for 4 yards. He did have a week 18 eruption last year when Andrews was out, 8-1-0-3-0, but that was without Monken. And then in the other game Andrews missed, it was just 1 catch for 24 yards. It was a 24-yard touchdown. So, yeah, I still think that Isaiah Likely is going to be a top 12 tight end option going forward. But whereas before I thought he was closer to top 5, I don't think that anymore with Monken and the way that I think Likely has played and is going to be used. So, yeah. Other note I had from this game was the Keaton Mitchell role. So snaps in this game. This was a game that they led pretty much the whole way, did the Ravens. Snaps were Gus Edwards 25, Keaton Mitchell 24, Justice Hill 16. Keaton only ran 8 routes. Gus ran 13, Justice 9. Keaton only got 9 opportunities, Gus 14, Justice 2. I'd love to see them just completely eliminate Justice Hill and go with Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell. I just don't think that they're going to do that. And so you get 9, some projection between 7 and 12 opportunities a week for Keaton Mitchell, I think is fair. He can still be productive in that role, but he's not going to be like a total smash. So, yeah.
Yeah, in that game as a prop, I actually took Keaton Mitchell under 7.5 receiving yards. He finished with 1 catch for 8 yards. Oh. But that kind of gives you – so I lost the bet. But that kind of gives you, the projection for him as a receiver. He is shot out of a cannon as a runner. I mean, I think he has special qualities.
Definitely.
As a runner. But it's going to be really tough for him to draw targets, especially with Justice Hill not yet going away.
Fourth biggest story of week 11 comes out of Pittsburgh. So we've been calling for this for a while. We are not unique in any way. Everyone with 2 eyes has been calling for this. Everyone in Pittsburgh has been calling for this. Matt Canada has officially been fired on the heels of their latest loss, this time playing Cleveland when they lost to Cleveland. Sounds like running back coach Eddie Faulkner will take over as offensive coordinator. Quarterbacks coach Mike Sullivan will be calling the plays. So listen, they have personnel problems. Kenny Pickett likely isn't it, no matter who his offensive coordinator is. But you just could not keep going with this guy. I mean, it seems like he lost the locker room. No one liked him. He was so uncreative. I have some ideas of what the new offensive coordinator can do. But Evan, I was curious on your initial reaction to Matt Canada getting canned here on this Tuesday morning.
Probably same as yours. I thought it was interesting that initially, at least via Jerry Dulac, who has covered the Steelers for forever for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, he wrote that it was Art Rooney who fired Matt Canada, which led me to believe that, ownership stepped in. They heard the fans. I mean, the fans are like fire Canada every single week. that he heard from them, and he stepped in. But then Mike Tomlin had his press conference, and he was like, it was my decision and my decision alone. Mike Sullivan, who's going to be calling plays for the Steelers, has called plays before for Tampa Bay and the Giants. He was like Eli Manning's quarterbacks coach for a really long time and then got the OC job, like, when Eli Manning's career was starting to wind down. So I don't know, no great, examples of success there, but he has called plays before. There are definitely things that he can change to make the team better. Jaylen Warren has like legit emerged as one of the best running backs in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that is hyperbole at all. Jacob Gibbs had some insane stats on his broken tackle rate over the past 4 or 5 games. And I mean, I just went back and watched all his runs from this past week. And actually, I think the way that they've been using him is actually good. It's the way the rest of the offense has been functioning that has been problematic, beginning with George Pickens.
I'll say a few things. First, on Mike Tomlin, I just think that's what a leader does. You know what I mean? Like a good leader, just things go bad, you take it on yourself. You don't say, oh, the owner made the decision. You just say, hey, it was my decision. I'll take it on myself. I'll take the responsibility. Second, I'm a little worried that if they try to do too much with Jaylen Warren, that he'll lose his effectiveness, like the Tony Pollard syndrome, right? The more carries they give him, the more touches they give him, the worse he'll get. But certainly that's one thing that this Matt Canada thing could change is let's make Jaylen Warren the 1A and Najee Harris the 1B instead of the other way around. The second thing that they could do, and I think it would be easier to do, is just use George Pickens more creatively. He is too talented to just be running go routes up the sideline the whole time. Mike Sullivan, Eddie Faulkner, hopefully they see that and they can make that change there. And then the final change is just you have to put Kenny Pickett into plays he's comfortable with. I mean, this guy cannot do anything out there right now. Completely inept. Ask him, what are 15 plays that you're comfortable with? And either make up new plays or run them or something. I mean, something has to change. Kenny Pickett has been completely inept. So, yeah, I think it was, the Steelers had to do it. Yeah.
I wanted to mention one other thing. Pat Freiermuth, who really began his career in really strong fashion, continues to be like a non-factor. I've not looked at his route and snap participation yet, but he comes back from injury, has 1 catch for 7 yards. Again, Kenny Pickett threw for 106 yards, but, so nobody's probably going to be any good in that kind of a scenario. But Pat Freiermuth has kind of reached the point where even at 2,500 on DraftKings, no. And then Deontay Johnson was seen on the sideline, like arguing with an offensive staff member. I don't know. There's, it seemed like they're starting to reach the point of dysfunction in Pittsburgh,
despite having a pretty good record.
Right.
If you go to Deontay Johnson's Twitter, apparently somebody did like a film breakdown of the play, and it looked like he ran the route wrong. He was adamant he did not run the route wrong, and I guess that's what he was probably arguing about on the sideline. So yeah, you can go to Deontay Johnson's Twitter if you want to see more on that. Fifth biggest story of the week comes out of Green Bay. I thought it was a solid win for Green Bay. You got a good game from Jordan Love against the Chargers. Evan was on that as the Chargers just being so inept defending the pass. We'll get to the Chargers defense when we get to them, but Brandon Staley was not happy that his defensive play calling was being questioned after the game. Anyways, the reason the Packers is a big story, though, is because they lost Aaron Jones to a knee injury early in this game, and they also lost Emmanuel Wilson to a shoulder injury. Now they're on a short week, getting ready to play the Lions on Thanksgiving. They're down to A.J. Dillon, Patrick Taylor, and some dust. This is a spot we'll be talking about plenty on Wednesday when we talk about the Thanksgiving slate. But Evan, what was your reaction to Packers getting a win over the Chargers and the Aaron Jones running back situation?
And I mean, I know you've been talking like you kind of think that Aaron Jones might be dusted at this point. Yeah. He looked so good in that first game, though, and then he yanked the crap out of his hamstring and hasn't been the same. I don't know. I mean, he's 29. So
happens fast.
That's a legitimate concern. Yeah, I mean the Packers just destroyed the Chargers with by attacking their safeties and linebackers. Jaden Reed, their slot man, who his snaps went way up in this game, getting past Dontavian Wicks, who he'd sort of been sharing with. Dontavian Wicks got hurt,
though,
concussion and a knee, so I don't think he'll be available on Thursday. But they used Jaden Reed to attack the Chargers linebackers, and obviously it worked. Jaden Reed had 3 for 46 and a touchdown on the ground and 4 for 46 through the air. Luke Musgrave came out with an abdomen injury and did not practice on Monday. We'll be talking about all this stuff on Wednesday morning.
Yeah. I'm concerned that A.J. Dillon is going to get like 80% of the work in this game on Thursday and still be inefficient. But yeah, that's a discussion to have on Thursday. I'd also note that Christian Watson finally got a touchdown in this game, but got out-targeted by Wicks, got out-targeted by Romeo Doubs, out-targeted by Jaden Reed, out-targeted by Luke Musgrave. It just feels like they're losing some confidence in Christian Watson.
Maybe he'll be a really interesting guy to discuss on Wednesday because last week, the week before this, he led the team in targets, and then this past week, he ran and played more snaps than any of the other Packers pass catchers. So he'll be an interesting guy that we're going to be talking about on Wednesday morning.
For sure, and we'll talk more about Patrick Taylor and all these other running backs then as well. All right, let's get into the NFC now. We'll be going alphabetical here. Start with the Arizona Cardinals. I thought Kyler Murray again looked good in his second start. Looked healthy, rushed 7 times for 51 yards and a touchdown, but they lose the game at Houston. Rondale Moore with Michael Wilson out was really popular DFS play, and I thought on DraftKings specifically, a really solid play. He ends up with just 1 target, though, whereas Greg Dortch got 8. That was really surprising to me. Evan, any reaction to Cardinals' loss to the Texans here?
I didn't have any big-time notes on this one. James Conner is back to being, like a workhorse. But yeah, Kyler looked great as a runner again. He's up to almost 100 yards rushing through two games since returning, and with 2 touchdowns as well. Trey McBride, 7 targets, 5 for 43. We'll definitely take that.
Yeah, I mean, Trey McBride's role with Zach Ertz out remains probably the best in the league. He played 61 of 61 snaps here, ran 37 routes on 38 Kyler dropbacks. In the 4 games since Ertz has gone down, McBride has a 29.4% target share. I think the question is what happens when Ertz comes back. To me, you just cannot put Ertz back on the field, really, unless you want to put him in the Jeff Swaim role. Jeff Swaim's still been playing a decent amount, but you cannot reduce Trey McBride's role. Evan, any take for people who are holding McBride and are worried about Ertz coming back?
I mean, it's a little bit concerning, We use the assumption of rational coaching probably too much, and it burns us, But absolutely, if we're assuming with anything with rationality, then it should be the Trey McBride show the rest of the way. And that's the way that I'm leaning. But, I mean, there is some real risk there.
Let's go to the Atlanta Falcons. They will come out of their bye to host the Saints in the biggest game of the year in the NFC South. Whoever wins this game, it will go a long way towards seeing who makes the playoffs, who wins this division. Arthur Smith announced as they came out of their bye that they're going back to Desmond Ridder. That's been speculated widely by many different people, including us on here. Evan, what do you think of the decision to go back to Ridder? Is that what you would have done? And any other Falcons thoughts as they come out of their bye?
I mean, I just don't think that they have the answer at quarterback. And Arthur Smith definitely doesn't believe in a Taylor Heineke. I don't even know if Taylor Heineke is back to full health anyways, coming off the hamstring injury, even after the bye. So, I mean, it's not surprising. I think that this was pretty much expected that they would go back to Desmond Ridder, and it really doesn't move the needle either way, I don't think.
Yeah, agreed. Remember in that game before the bye, we did see a really good Bijan Robinson usage. Just keep that in mind going forward here. Panthers. Latest ugly outing for Bryce Young is a 33-10 loss at home to the Cowboys. I mean, just no chance against this Cowboys defense. You could tell what he was doing. He was just trying to get the ball to Adam Thielen at all costs. Thielen ends up with a 38% target share. Doesn't seem like that's slowing down at all. The only thing good I can say about the Panthers and Bryce Young is much easier matchup coming up this week at the Titans. Evan, what do you see out of Panthers against the Cowboys?
I mean, an expected result. Bryce Young took 7 sacks on 36 dropbacks, and the Panthers got pounded. And I don't know. I don't think anything has changed. We have our expectations for the Panthers, and they continue to be low.
Yep. Bears. So Justin Fields returns here for this game at Detroit. Khalil Herbert returns, and they had a pretty good chance to win. They played a good game. I mean, they ended up losing 31-26, but they were in it. And I think, people have asked so much, should I drop Fields? Fields stinks. He showed in this game why you can't drop Fields in fantasy. He throws a dime to DJ Moore for a 39-yard touchdown, just a sick throw. And then he also runs for 100 yards in the game. I mean, that is really unique to have on your fantasy team. Evan, what do you think of Justin Fields' return up there at Detroit?
I think he played pretty well. And I think that the Bears showed that when they are at full strength, which again, this was their first time all season being at full strength on the offensive line, although they did lose a guard during this game. But, their backups had played so much that, basically a starter replacing Lucas Patrick in there. But, Justin Fields was 100%. All the pass catchers were 100%. And they showed that they can play competent offense when they are at 100%. Justin Herzig in our private Slack suggested that maybe with the little hand injury that Justin Fields had, maybe he would run more in this game. I mentioned it on the Sunday show, and that proved prescient because Justin Fields had 18 rushes in this game. The backfield remains, it's back to a three-man ordeal. Justin Fields only threw for 169 yards, but man, his touchdown pass to DJ Moore, 39 yards out, was a freaking frozen rope. And, the Bears, I know that this is more real football discussion. Justin Fields is an every week starter in fantasy, period. But from a real life discussion, like it's going to be, they are in such a conundrum with these draft picks coming up, and Justin Fields kind of like you still kind of don't know with them.
Yeah, my take is just keep taking quarterbacks until you find like one where for sure.
Like
you just keep taking. That's my take. D'Onta Foreman did get hurt and leave in this game. I don't know how serious it is, but they ended up riding Khalil Herbert pretty hard after Foreman left this game. We'll see on his status going forward. Alice predictably goes into Carolina and rolls. The big news was that Tony Pollard was alive, at least kind of. He did rush 12 times for 61 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown run, you go back and watch it. Like if you think Tony Pollard doesn't have juice, this was a very, very strong, impressive touchdown run. He also caught 4 balls, did not play in the fourth quarter due to another blowout. I mean, this is just crazy. Every game the Cowboys play, seems like their guys are sitting out the fourth quarter. But yeah, I think we talked about this as Tony Pollard's most likely outcome. He only got 16 touches. He only got to 80 yards, but he had a chance for a bunch of touchdowns converted. One of them, Evan, what'd you think of Dallas's win down there in Carolina?
Well, I think that at least heading into week 12, because they're playing on the short week, and Rico Dowdle did not practice on Monday. That'll be a situation to monitor. We know that he was questionable last week. He played a decent amount here in garbage time, but with a short week and no practice, it'll be interesting to see if he's active. Just as you mentioned, utter domination. Dak Prescott doesn't even have to finish the game. That kind of cut into the receiving production a little bit because they just weren't, forced to do anything outside of the box. So, but CeeDee Lamb still got there with 6 for 38 and a touchdown and remains one of the hottest receivers in football.
Yeah, I mean, even though they sat out the fourth quarter, Dak threw it 38 times. That is more than most quarterbacks throw every week. So yeah, another good Dak game. They just remain so throw heavy. I mean, these last 3-4 games, all they've done is just come out and throw in situations where most teams run. Only other note I had on this game was Michael Gallup did catch 3 balls, but his role keeps getting worse. I mean, his playing time keeps going down and down. I would much rather have Brandon Cooks. If anyone can make that swap on their team, I'd much rather have Cooks than Gallup right now.
Yeah, Jalen Tolbert is cutting into his playing time, and they're getting the backup tight ends more involved. Luke Schoonmaker had a touchdown in this one.
Lions. So I thought this was one of the worst games that Jared Goff has played at home as a Lion. Gets picked off 3 times, just 6.7 yards per attempt. They do come back and manage to win the game, but largely on the back of the backfield, which, man, Dave Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, you can start both of these guys every week. Evan, what did you see out of Lions comeback win over the Bears up there in Ford Field?
Yeah, Jared Goff did not play well for the entirety of the game, which was surprising because he's facing the Bears defense has been getting better. But I mean, still, a vulnerable defense at home where Jared Goff typically shines. Jameson Williams, this was his highest usage game of the season, at least from a snap standpoint. He played 65, the highest usage game of his career, 65% of the snaps. He only saw, I think, 3 targets, but he has like moved into 3 receiver sets at this point. I was worried when they traded for DPJ. Was that an indictment of Jameson Williams? And it seems like that is not the case. It is Jameson Williams, Josh Reynolds, and of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is unstoppable.
Yep. So this was DPJ's first game active as a Lion. Jared Goff dropped back 38 times. DPJ ran just 2 routes. Jameson Williams ran 25 routes. Jameson Williams is very cheap on the 3-game slate. We'll be talking about him on Wednesday for sure. Just to put a bow on the Montgomery Gibbs stuff. So Demont played 25 snaps, Gibbs 36. Demont did out carry Gibbs 12-8, but Gibbs' pass game role was way better. 6 targets for Gibbs, 2 for Montgomery. Both of those 2 came in the last drive for Montgomery. They just score on a goal line chance. So, I think it's hard to parse between them. I currently prefer Gibbs if he's going to have this goal line role or a goal line role and get the pass down work. But I'm certainly still happy to have David Montgomery and start him teams as well.
Sam Laporta has had 2 somewhat slow games in a row. And for if you lost Mark Andrews, maybe put in a trade offer for Sam Laporta because his on-field role has not lessened. Amon-Ra St. Brown was the only Packers pass catcher to run more routes than Laporta this past week. Maybe hitting a little bit of a rookie wall, but hey, you use that in trade talks. I think that Sam Laporta is likelier than not to finish the season strong.
Los Angeles Rams. So Matthew Stafford comes back from his thumb injury. I didn't think he was great, but somehow they won this game in large part because Geno left for most of the fourth quarter. Geno Smith left for most of the fourth quarter. Rams are able to come back and somehow win the game. The story, though, coming out is Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was wide open for a long touchdown early in the game. Somehow, can't find the ball, gets turned around, drops it. Then a little bit later, he hurts his ankle, the same ankle he had issues with this offseason blocking. He leaves. Now, it sounds like a regular, mild ankle sprain, but anytime it's on the same ankle as the tightrope surgery was, I am concerned there. After he left, Puka Nacua started going nuts. Puka finishes 571. So I'm worried about Cooper Kupp right now on a lot of different angles, but the Rams getting a win is going to ensure that they stay hungry here. Evan, what do you think of Rams comeback win over the Seahawks?
Yeah, just specifically on Cooper Kupp, I think it was Stefania Bell who you interviewed before the season was talking about with the accumulation of injuries.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just his body has taken a legit beating. He's over 30 now. And so I don't know, I had him ranked high for a long, I dumped him into the 5th round or something so that no one would get him if you drafted late, but I definitely had him too high for too long entering the season. Kyren Williams is, I think, almost certain to return this week. This has been the game that Sean McVay has been targeting for Kyren Williams' return, and it sounds like that's going to happen against Arizona, which is a really good matchup for Kyren Williams.
Yes, and I'll be interested to see role there because they've used Royce Freeman, they've used Darrell Henderson, but before Kyren Williams went down, Kyren had one of the best roles out of any running back in the entire NFL. I don't think they're going to throw him all the way back into that, but would not surprise me if he comes back to 60, 70% of the running back touches or something like that. Vikings played the Sunday night football game this week at Denver and lose it. No Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson sounds like now might be sitting out through the week 13 bye. But you did get Josh Dobbs here. Throws for 221 yards. Runs in a touchdown, throws a touchdown. Also, what do you think of Vikings' narrow loss to the Broncos on Sunday night?
Well, it was a big usage game for Alexander Mattison. I didn't have any tide turning observations on this. The biggest note is obviously Justin Jefferson, who now looks like he is going to return in week 14.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think that this is more along the lines of who the Vikings are as a team, as opposed to that team that won 5 in a row.
Yeah. On the running back stuff, so Madison did come back from the concussion and immediately outsnapped Ty Chandler 48-23, but opportunities were only 20-14, and Ty Chandler was very efficient in this game. I think given opportunity, Ty Chandler will be more efficient than Alexander Madison going forward. So yeah, like the Ty Chandler best ball bags, which I have a ton of, I feel better about that now. And in season long, I know we talked about it last week with Sam on the waiver show, but yeah, Ty Chandler should obviously be owned, I think, everywhere.
Just a lot more juice than Alexander Madison.
Yeah. Saints will be coming out of their bye for that huge NFC South game that I just mentioned against the Falcons. The big question around the team is, will Derek Carr get cleared? Now, as of now, Derek Carr is still in the concussion protocol. It sounds like they want Derek Carr to come back and start. Every fantasy player, probably a lot of Saints fans, prefer it to be Jameis Winston. We'll see what happens there. Evan, any lean on if Derek Carr can get cleared here? Any other Saints thoughts as they come out of their bye?
I don't know. He just got to pass through the protocol. So we'll find out when they find out.
Yeah. What if they, my conspiracy theory take is you can use this as a way to hide Derek Carr for one more week. Like, let's say you could say Derek Carr is not cleared. We're going to start Jameis and see how it goes.
They gave him such a big deal.
I know.
And they're paying Jameis nothing. So that's just difficult to justify to management. And I would love that. I think it would be a good thing for Chris Olave. The other interesting situation is Michael Thomas is like out indefinitely. Have you seen any kind of a timeline on him yet?
They said it's not season ending, but they're saying it's serious. So somewhere in between there. I don't know.
And it sounds like A.T. Perry, rather than Rashid Shaheed, is going to get the first crack at semi-replacing Michael Thomas. In the game before the bye, A.T. Perry led all the Saints wide receivers in snaps played. So I don't know, maybe a potential sleeper against Atlanta. We'll talk about that on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, Rashid Shaheed has a very specific role, and it is very different from the role that Michael Thomas was playing. Also, you remember A.T. Perry is the one that caught that crazy pass from Jameis, who threw it like 75 yards across the entire field into the end zone horizontally to A.T. Perry for a touchdown. Giants. I mean, Tommy DeVito shredded, man. And we've been talking about how this Commanders defense is probably the most fantasy friendly to use guys against. But I still didn't think that Tommy DeVito would go 18 of 26 for 246 yards with 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, especially in a game where Darius Slayton leaves with an injury. I mean, my God, this Commanders defense. Tommy DeVito is one to sling it, though. Any thoughts on Giants win over the Washington Commanders, Evan?
The certified gunslinger, Tommy DeVito. No, I mean, you got to give. He still took 9 sacks on 35 dropbacks.
Yeah,
that is wild. But yeah, I mean, he looked willing to rip it in this one.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley in the first half had 6 rushes for -2 yards, and then kind of went ballistic in the second half. And they used him really creatively as a receiver. He finished with 57 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. You like to see that because, one of Saquon Barkley's biggest strengths has always been his receiving capability. And you like to see that put to use by Brian Daboll.
I do think that an interesting guy, if Darius Slayton misses time, and Darius Slayton left this game with an arm injury, is Jalen Hyatt. Now, Jalen Hyatt has not been playing a decent amount, playing a lot actually, and not being able to put it in the box score. But man, he should have a really good role here. And if DeVito can keep slinging it, I think it's at least in play for Jalen Hyatt to have some reasonable games down the stretch. Eagles. I was actually excited for this game. I mean, Monday night, potential Super Bowl preview, Eagles at Chiefs. It was raining a bit. From the Eagles' perspective, obviously a great win for them. I was so stunned in the first half. They could not protect Jalen Hurts at all. I mean, they could not give him a second. He was getting completely destroyed. They found something in the screen game, specifically the middle screens to DeAndre Swift. They ran it like 4 times, and these middle screens to DeAndre Swift kept working. Between that, they hit a big play to Devonta Smith, a few tush pushes. Next thing you know, they have a win in Kansas City. So really good win for them. Evan, what'd you see out of Eagles last night in Kansas City.
You're right. With one of the best offensive lines in the league, the Eagles couldn't protect it. 5 sacks in the first half for Jalen Hurts. And I think it's a testament, number one, to the Chiefs' defense, which is super talented. And everybody got to see that. We've been talking about that really all year, how good the Chiefs' defense is. Everybody got to see that in this game. The Chiefs' defense has really been carrying them a lot this, for the majority of the season because, well, we'll talk about the Chiefs when we talk about them. But, that was another thing was that Devontae Smith, we talked about with no Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith has, his target share has risen, and he delivered. He led the team in targets with 8. A.J. Brown was super quiet. He had a end zone target that fell incomplete, finished with 1 catch for 4 yards, but Devontae Smith delivered 6 for 99.
Dallas Goedert has missed 4 games over the last 2 seasons. Actually, more than that. I think he's been 6 games over the last 2 seasons now. And Devontae has had at least 8 targets in every single one of those. Devontae Smith has. And it's because Jack Stoll and Albert O and Julio Jones and Alameda Zacchaeus, they're just non-existent. They're just non-existent. And so you start to get more targets for everyone. Clearly, the Chiefs wanted to take A.J. Brown out of this game. They did so successfully. Oh, 2 more tush pushes for Jalen Hurts. I didn't update the numbers. I have like this running log of how many tush push touchdowns Jalen Hurts has scored over the last 2 seasons. I mean, it's getting out of control. This guy is like, it's getting completely, he's almost up to averaging 1 tush push touchdown per game at this point. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
One of the Dallas Goedert is still not on IR, I believe, right? And there seems to be some optimism that he could return after missing 3 weeks.
Sounds like, I mean, if they're not going to put him on IR, then they might as well. I mean, they must think that he can be back before 4 weeks. So yeah, that's good on Goddard for sure. Seahawks. Like I said, they were in control of this game. They were in control of this game the whole way. They were in control of this game late. Next thing you know, Geno Smith takes a hit on his throwing elbow. He has to leave. Drew Lock comes in, and they end up losing the game. Now, Geno did come back in for the final drive. He got them in position for a long field goal that they missed. But that gives me some optimism for this short week. Again, Seahawks play on Thanksgiving night. Gives me some optimism that Geno will play and be close to 100% for this game on Thursday. The other big news was Kenneth Walker going down with an oblique injury. So, yeah, Evan, thoughts on Seahawks coming out of this Rams game?
Yeah, Pete Carroll does have a tendency to give injury assessments with rose-colored glasses, but it sounds like Geno Smith is going to be all right to play against San Francisco, which that's going to be a real tough matchup. There's a chance that they can get back Abe Lucas, their stud right tackle, finally this week, I think. And they need him. I mean, this 49ers defensive front is just absolutely insanely talented. There were a bunch of guys reserve receivers, Jake Bobo, Derek Young, listed as no practice on Monday. Tyler Lockett, who didn't practice at all last week, and was a little bit limited in the game. He was still one of the primary 3 receivers, but he did get in a limited practice on Monday. They play the 49ers on the Thanksgiving night finale.
Yeah, so I've been waiting for Zach Charbonnet to have his big chance, and I don't think Kenneth Walker is going to play. They say that the oblique injury is not that serious, but whenever they start saying oblique stuff, I always worry about the sports hernia. Sometimes these things start as oblique, and next thing you know, they're in Philadelphia with that doctor. I think his name is like Dr. Myers or something, who does all the sports hernia surgery. So we'll see on Kenneth Walker. I think Zach Charbonnet, who caught 6 balls in this game, by the way, is an awesome play anytime Kenneth Walker is out. The matchups, though, that he's going to run into are difficult. 49ers, Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles. Those are the next 4 games for the Seahawks here. So I'm still excited about Zach Charbonnet. I'd still certainly want to start him. Just the matchups are not great.
Oh, that's such a brutal schedule. I mean, those are all Super Bowl contenders, like legit, teams that could definitely win the Super Bowl. God, the Seahawks are 6-4. They're a pretty good team. I mean, probably top 12, I think, somewhere in that range. But man, that sounds like 4 straight losses.
Given their upcoming schedule, this was just an inexcusable loss. I mean, such a bad loss for them to lose to the Rams when they controlled the game the whole way. 49ers, as expected, Brock Purdy was incredible. I mean, a perfect game, perfect quarterback rating here against the Bucs, and he really only targeted 4 guys. Juwan Jennings got 1 target, but every other target in this game went to Ayuk, Kittle, Debo, or CMC. as it should. And, people can hate on Brock Purdy all they want. He is doing exactly what is asked of him in this offense. And I still think that he has a case, at least an outside case, to be the NFL's MVP. Evan, any thoughts on 49ers blowout of the Bucs?
Yeah, and I think that Kyle Shanahan has always been one of the best. And we talk about what is really the definition of quality coaching, and it's on the offensive side of the ball, getting the ball to your best players. And Kyle Shanahan has always been one of those. I understand that sometimes the guys can be inconsistent because there's 4 studs in terms of their pass catchers, their skill position players outside of quarterback, so they can be inconsistent. But every week, you can count on at least one, if not two, probably 2 dudes going off. And in this one, it was Ayuk. I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah Move the Sticks podcast, and he was talking about how explosive Brandon Ayuk is with his release off the line. Like, he's just an absolute blur when he just starts to get going. And I think at this point, and you remember we had Matt Harmon on before the season. He was talking about Brandon Ayuk. He's like, it's going to happen at some point. He's going to bust out because he is an elite route runner, and he's gotten there.
Yeah. We had Tank Dell 45-1 to lead the week in receiving yards this week. And then it was looking really good. And then Brandon Ayuk gets a 76-yard catch to beat him by like 3 yards. So frustrating. But man, Brandon Ayuk, undoubtedly a baller. San Francisco plays Seattle on Thanksgiving night and then plays Seattle again a couple weeks later.
Brock Purdy had a perfect passer rating against Tampa Bay, which, again, that's a defense that we want to attack every single week with pass catchers and quarterbacks.
Speaking of the Bucs, let's go to them. No surprise. They go across the country. They're never really in it against the 49ers. Baker gets sacked 4 times, commits 2 turnovers. They obviously have no chance of running the football. So I don't want to say a throwaway game, but they were just always drawing dead here. But next, the Bucs get Colts, Panthers, Falcons, Packers. I'm not writing off Rachaad White, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin at all. I think these guys are actually going to be pretty good assets through this schedule. Evan, what do you think of Bucs stuff at San Francisco?
Nothing big to add to that other than Rachaad White continues to have a voluminous and very productive role in the passing game. That has reached the point to where it's something that I think we can count on each week.
Last NFC team is the Washington football team, a.k.a. the Commanders. Just an embarrassing home loss to Tommy DeVito. Zach Howell takes 4 more, throws 3 interceptions. The team as a whole loses 3 fumbles. The people that were saying, oh, we found our franchise quarterback, this loss is going to be a gut punch to those people. Evan, what do you think of Commanders' meltdown at home to the Giants?
It happens. The Commanders aren't a very good team. They can be fun in fantasy. Another 49 dropbacks here for Sam Howell. Antonio Gibson was out for this game.
Yep.
And so Brian Robinson took on that big role that we were hoping that he would get. He finished with 24 touches, yet again heavily involved in the passing game, has 13 catches over his last 2 games. They play Dallas on Thanksgiving. Antonio Gibson was limited on Monday. I saw a practice video of him today. We're recording this Tuesday early afternoon, and I thought he was still hobbling. Now, that's to my completely untrained eye, but a situation that we'll certainly be discussing on Wednesday morning.
Well, Antonio Gibson's been dealing with toe issues for a long time now, a long time. So, yeah, we'll see on him. I was worried that Brian Robinson was going to be pegged as this exclusive 2-down between the tackles guy. It's been encouraging to see him get so much pass down work lately. And part of it is they just don't have anyone else. They have Derek Gore and Chris Rodriguez or whatever. But yeah, the fact that they're willing to give Brian Robinson those reps in the pass game, his role is awesome right now.
And Logan Thomas continues to be a rock solid, mid-range to low-end tight end 1.
All right, let's move to the AFC now. We'll start with the Buffalo Bills. When you face Zach Wilson at home, you need to get a blowout, and that is exactly what happened. I thought an interesting thing that the Bills seem to do is try to limit the mistakes, right? They have had so many bad turnovers, so many egregious mistakes this season that has cost them games. In this game, they seem to be a bit more conservative. They go to a short pass game. You get a 6.9 yard ADOT from Josh Allen. That was his third lowest of the season, and you get an easy win. But one thing that you don't get with that is Gabe Davis stuff. I mean, 0 Gabe Davis targets here. Not a great sign. But anyways, Evan, what do you see out of Bills' easy win over the Jets?
Yeah, and one thing that Dan Orlovsky, who gets crap sometimes, but I think he actually does like a pretty damn good job. One thing that he noted is that the Bills used a lot more motion because and that's something that you can do to like get guys open that maybe aren't great at getting open on their own. And that was one of the changes that Joe Brady implemented, and they had a pretty clean offensive game here. Another thing that Tej Seth of Sumer Sports noted was that Josh Allen, who historically has taken like a lot of sacks, he's the third lowest sack rate of all quarterbacks in the NFL. Josh Allen is having a real good season. It's just, they've had like bad luck. We talked about this when Ken Dorsey got fired, and he really wound up being the fall guy. Going forward, it's going to be really interesting to see. Oh, by the way, Dalton Kincaid has caught 51 of his 58 targets this season.
Yeah,
that's wild efficiency, and I think that he's living up to the hype of being a first-round pick. One other thing to note, though, is that Dawson Knox can return in Week 12. How is that going to affect Dalton Kincaid? Yeah. How is that going to affect Khalil Shakir, who has been awesome in an expanded role as the Bills slot receiver, whereas Gabe Davis has been, a ghost?
My personal take is that they should stick with what they're doing: more spread, more 3-wide, more 4-wide, more featuring of Dalton Kincaid. However, they clearly value Dawson Knox plenty, and we could see them go back to a lot of these 2 tight end stuff that they were doing, and Khalil Shakir barely playing. So yeah, I think the Knox thing is quietly really important. Cat is out of the bag for me on Kincaid. I think Cat could go back into the bag on Shakir, though, would be my take on it. Let's go to Cleveland Browns. So Dorian Thompson-Robinson gets the start here for the Browns, ends up throwing it 43 times in a 13-10 win over the Steelers. On those 43 throws from DTR, he netted 165 passing yards. I mean, that is absolutely inept. I know it was a tough matchup against Pittsburgh, but still not a good sign for him. They won, though, so I assume they're going to stick with DTR going forward. Evan, what do you think of DTR's start? Anything else, Browns?
Well, just a lot of short stuff, number one. A lot of quick slants, screens. They threw it to David Njoku 15 times. He had 3 drops. So that ain't going to help your YPA. And then they used a little bit of quarterback run, but Dorian Thompson didn't have a big game as a runner. I think that they're just going to play it close to the vest, lean on their defense, which remains dominant. And, they're going to try to live this way. They did sign Joe Flacco to their practice squad. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a chance if it starts to go real south for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they could maybe use Joe Flacco.
Yeah, it could go south for sure. I mean, these Njoku targets, 3.5 yard ADOT on these Njoku targets. He's been around that 3 yard ADOT all year, just really, really low, close to the line of scrimmage. Denver. So the Broncos surge continues. They're now 5-5 on the season after beating the Vikings on Sunday night. Russ Wilson, I thought, was really good. 27 of 35 in this game. Courtland Sutton was really good. I don't know, man. Like, I don't think the Broncos are good by any stretch, but they've certainly been playing good football, way better football lately. What do you think of their win over the Vikings on Sunday night?
Well, I was a little surprised that Javonte Williams didn't continue his streak of piling up touches.
Yeah.
That was a little bit surprising to me that they went back to using Samaje Perine and Jaleel McLaughlin a decent amount. Both those guys were productive. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Javonte only ran 4 routes in this entire game. I mean, the pass game stuff all went to McLaughlin and Perine. So, yeah, 4 routes for Javonte was surprising to me also. Yeah,
they're leaning into like using a lot of tight ends, using multiple running back sets and trying to play like power football. And I don't know, shoot, they've won 4 in a row. I saw after the game, Russell Wilson and Cortland Sutton were interviewed together, and they were like riffing. They seemed like they're best buds, and that has translated a decent amount onto the field.
For sure. Yeah. Just to put a wrap on that Javonte thing, 4 routes for Javonte, 12 for P. Ryan, 7 for McLaughlin. Just really, really weird. But I think, there was some hot hand stuff. I mean, P. Ryan was playing really well in the pass game. They stuck with it.
Power football was actually going into the season how I thought the Broncos were going to play, based on a lot of the moves that they made during the offseason. But yeah, the Javonte thing was a little disappointing.
Houston. So CJ Stroud continues to be impressive. And I actually was thinking about this. Like, I wouldn't actually, well, I won't say I wouldn't, but I don't think it's crazy to think CJ Stroud has been the most valuable player in the league. If you define most valuable player as the person who was meant most to his team. Without CJ Stroud, this Texans team might win 4 games, 3 games. And I mean, they're really good right now. They're 6-4 in the first half of this game against Arizona. I thought Stroud was going to go for 400 or 500 passing yards again. He was absolutely shredding. He turned it over a bunch, which slowed the game down. But man, finishes with 336 more yards, 2 more passing touchdowns. Another impressive Stroud performance here. Evan, what do you think of Texans win over the Cardinals?
I think that that's exactly how I would define MVP, the most important player to his team. And man, I've been all over the place with these MVP bets and stuff. And the Joe Burrow one is cooked. Josh Allen, I think, still has a chance, but he's down to 18-1. Dak, I think, is looking okay. Got him at 40-1. But I think right now, if the season ended right now, I think you can make an awesome case that CJ Stroud has been the most valuable player to his team because, and we've talked about this every week at this point, his ability to elevate teammates.
Yeah.
And that's not to take away from Tank Dell, who's an insane baller.
Yeah.
Over his last 3 games, Tank Dell, 20 catches, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, 12 catches of 15-plus yards, which is the most in the league during that span. It sounds like Dameon Pierce has a good chance to return this week, but Devin Singletary is hot right now, and they are convinced that he's just a better option for Bobby Slowick's outside zone running scheme. He sees the lanes better, and he's responded back-to-back over 100-yard rushing performances for Devin Singletary.
Yeah, how do you think the split will go when Pierce gets back?
I think it's going to be Singletary's backfield. I mean, he was already making that move.
Yeah.
They were so unproductive on the ground with Dameon Pierce in the lead back, and then you started to see it shift, remember? And then Dameon Pierce got hurt, and they didn't want to rush him back because he's not seeing the outside zone stuff. So yeah. I think it's going to be Singletary in the lead back, and they'll give Dameon Pierce a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, Tank, Nico, Robert Woods, Noah Brown, Schultz, that's pretty good pass catching group. There's no doubt that Stroud is elevating them, though. The last thing I'll say about MVP is it's really hard to win MVP when your team doesn't win 12, 13, 14 games, right? And if the Texans get there, I think that's the best chance. But the reason that Stroud is still 18-1, 20-1 for MVP is just if the team only wins 8 or 9 games, can you really vote Stroud for MVP over someone like Jalen Hurts, whose team is going to win 15 games, and he's been a huge part of that.
Yeah, I think Jalen Hurts is actually the betting favorite right now.
After last night, he's the favorite and deserves to be, in my opinion.
Yeah. The Texans do have a pretty favorable schedule the rest of the way. Jacksonville isn't a gimme. Denver has become a non-gimme. But then the Jets are very beatable. The Titans are very beatable. Cleveland is very beatable with their quarterback situation. The Titans again, and then the Colts. So I do think that, I don't know about 10 or 12, or 11 or 12 wins, but I do think that the Texans have a chance to get 10.
Yep. Let's go to the Colts. Colts were on a bye. They will come out of it in a really good spot. Home game against the Bucs. This will certainly be a game that we're talking about on the Friday night show. Josh Downs' health. I have my eye on. Remember in that game before Josh Downs before the bye, Josh Downs had a knee injury, tried to play through it, aggravated it, and left. And also we got huge Jonathan Taylor usage in that game before the bye as well. I think that's going to be sticky. So, yeah, really interesting spot for the Colts coming out of their bye. Any thoughts on them, Evan?
Yeah, good spot for Michael Pittman. We talked about the Bucs pass defense just getting fried.
Yeah. Jacksonville. So Trevor Lawrence came into this game with a bit of a knee issue, but it did not look like any factor whatsoever. In fact, Trevor Lawrence ran for 2 touchdowns in this game, in addition for going for 262 pass yards and 2 touchdowns on just 32 attempts. The big news was the Calvin Ridley breakout. And I'm not sure you've heard this narrative, Evan, but people are attributing the Calvin Ridley breakout to Zay Jones playing. In other words, Zay Jones runs some of these clear out boundary routes, allowing Calvin Ridley to have more high percentage routes in the middle of the field, etc. That's the narrative. It's a very small sample, but in the 3 games that Zay Jones has played with Calvin Ridley, Ridley's had 3 of his best games. So what do you think about that narrative, Evan? Any thoughts on the Calvin Ridley breakout game here or any other Jaguars thoughts?
I think it's somewhat interesting. But I also think that, it's a small sample. Also, the Jaguars have started to use more multiple tight ends, and they're using Luke Farrell now, and that may lend itself to some more route creativity for Calvin Ridley, because now you have 2 receivers on the field, and it's not like each guy has that assigned role when they're in the 11 personnel. So I think that could also be help Calvin Ridley going forward. Of course, I've been a guy saying buy low on Calvin Ridley since like week 4, and that hasn't necessarily paid any kind of dividends. But I mean, it's good to see that he has this big game capability in his bag still, because he's gone. He's been streaky at best this year.
Evan Ingram had a ton more air yards in this game, but God, the red zone role, he's seen 74 targets this year, which is huge. It's 23rd most among all NFL players. 74 targets is second most among all tight ends. 0 of those targets have come inside the 10-yard line. 0. So it's hard to get touchdowns when you're not being targeted at all inside the 10-yard line. Last note I had was, I think it's Jover for Tank Bigsby, man. I mean, he's gotten passed by Dearness Johnson now and just made so many mistakes, did Tank Bigsby. And yeah, just really scary rookie year. He's been absolutely terrible, has Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think like he's in his own head at this point. Drop passes that lead to interceptions, lost fumbles all over the place. Yeah, it's been brutal.
Chiefs. So everybody's going to blame MVS. Everybody who watched the game saw MVS drop a game-winning touchdown that hit him in the hands. But the offense continues to sputter. I mean, Mahomes has just 177 pass yards in this game. He only had 185 pass yards in their previous game against Miami. He only had 240 pass yards in a loss to Denver, but they've shown no interest whatsoever in really changing things. Justin Watson has become a featured wide receiver for them. Rashee Rice only ran a route on 52% of the dropbacks last night. So maybe this is a wake-up call for the Chiefs that they need to make some changes. I'm not exactly sure what they can do other than play Rashee Rice a lot more. Evan, what do you think of Chiefs' loss to the Eagles last night?
Yeah, as I kind of talked about when we were talking about the Eagles, the Chiefs had become like a defense-first team. Steve Spagnuolo, who has always been like highly respected by the tape crowd and by other coaches throughout the league, but kind of never really had the greatest amount of talent in Kansas City, all of a sudden does, and their defense is elite. So, and that's not going away. Travis Kelce banged up his knee, but returned during the game. I assume that he'll be fine going forward. He looked a little slower than usual. Yep. Tay was not there.
Correct.
He also had a bad drop late in the game. Or no, was it a fumble? Yeah, it was a lost fumble.
He had a fumble and a bad drop.
A bad drop because the Chiefs dropped 4 passes in this game conservatively. And 3 of them occurred in the fourth quarter, including the one that you mentioned, MVS. MVS finished catchless. Justin Watson, 11 targets. I mean, Justin Watson also had at least 1 bad drop. When Justin Watson is your number 1 receiver, number 1 wide receiver, you can't really expect to have a big-time
Yeah.
passing attack. I did think that this was maybe the best that Isaiah Pacheco has looked this season.
Yeah. One thing that I've noticed with Mahomes, given the situation around him and his receivers in these big games, he's willing to run. I mean, he was running a ton last night, ended up with like close to 40 rushing yards. And I don't think that's a coincidence. You know, when you don't have anyone to throw to or get open, just run with it, man. And he was picking up nice chunks running the football. Raiders, Packers, Bills next up for the Chiefs. Chargers go to Green Bay and lose. I mean, this defense allowed Jordan Love to go 27 of 40 for 322 and 2 touchdowns. After the game, someone in the Chargers media asked Brandon Staley if he's going to continue to call the defensive plays, and he blew a gasket. I mean, he did not like that question whatsoever. Truth is that this Chargers defense, though, is one of the worst in the entire NFL, period. And I think they lost Bosa in this game. I didn't see how severe it is, but it does not sound good on Bosa. Evan, what do you think of Chargers' loss up there in Green Bay?
Joey Bosa is already on IR.
Oh, maybe it was different Bosa then, or maybe I'm thinking of someone else.
No, I think you were thinking of Joey Bosa.
Possible.
And that's a massive blow to the Chargers pass defense, which was already the worst in football.
Oh, yeah. He got hurt in this game. They already put him on IR. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't phrase that correctly. Yeah. No, he went immediately on IR. They didn't waste any time. I think they might have placed him on IR during the game. It's just, man. And Herbert is balling.
Yeah.
But Quentin Johnson had a really bad drop. Keenan Allen dropped 2 touchdowns. Stone Smart made a big play. Stone Smart, huh?
Yeah.
So, Herbert, they used him on some design runs in this game. He had 73 rushing yards, which I believe is a career high.
Gotta be.
For him. But, he should have had way more than 260 passing yards. He should have thrown for at least 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I think I have this correct, that the Chargers have lost 5 games by 3 or fewer points
every year.
It's like something in the water.
I mean, look, on Justin Herbert, you didn't have Mike Williams. You didn't have Josh Palmer. You didn't have Jalen Guyton. You didn't have Gerald Everett. Austin Eckler, I don't know if you guys saw the tape. I mean, he looked slow out there. I think the ankle issue is still bothering Austin Eckler to some degree. You have Quentin Johnston, who just they do not want to put out there. They're only putting him out there out of necessity. For Justin Herbert to be doing what he's doing is actually a miracle. And that's why we talked on Sunday morning about playing Keenan Allen in DFS, even though he wasn't projecting well. It's just hard for Justin Herbert to throw to anyone else. That's who is open. Keenan Allen is the only one who is open. So, man, it's an awesome setup for Keenan Allen. I know I joked a lot about Donald Parham, but I was serious this past week. And Donald Parham finished with the second most air yards and second best opportunity among all tight ends this past week. He ran 30 routes on 44 dropbacks, 6 targets. It was like a better game than Gerald Everett ever had. And so we'll see how long Gerald Everett's out for, but I do think Parham is viable given all the injuries around him right now, as long as Gerald Everett is out.
Somewhat notable, the Ravens obviously have been awesome on defense, but you can kind of hurt them in the middle of the field a little bit. They've given up production to tight ends. So hopefully we get another Donald Parham game.
Raiders. The defense surprisingly kept the Raiders in it in Miami. And I was watching this game closely because I played a ton of Tua stacks in tournaments, and Tua and Tyreek came out absolutely shredding. But Raiders defense found something and was able to control them for much of this game. But you have AOC at quarterback, it's really hard to win. He got picked off 3 times, takes 2 sacks. Evan, what do you think of Raiders keeping it close down there in Miami, but not being able to win the game?
2 notes. Devontae Adams led all players in air yards in week 11 with, I think, 195, 13 targets. So you like to see them actively trying to get him the ball. Michael Mayer had a nice game, 4 for 46 on 5 targets. Josh Jacobs' passing game usage has been down since Antonio. He's still dominating the rushing share, but his passing game usage has been way down since Antonio Pierce took over. It's a small sample size, 3 games now. So I don't know if that's necessarily sticky, but somewhat notable.
Michael Mayer, 446-0 on 5 targets. This is back-to-back 5-target games for Michael Mayer. Remember, in the previous game, he had that really good touchdown catch. He's at least alive now. He's at least alive. I just wanted to say that. Dolphins. As I just mentioned, they beat the Raiders at home. Tyreek came out on fire. He left briefly with like a hand issue. And while he was out, Jalen Waddle went nuts. I mean, Jalen Waddle caught like 4 passes for 50 yards or something while Tyreek was out. As soon as Tyreek comes back, though, Waddle goes empty. Tyreek starts going nuts again. The sad news from this game, Devon Achane banged up the same knee that has been bothering him this whole time. I'd consider him questionable for Friday's game against the Jets at this point. Evan, what do you think of Dolphins? Kind of a disappointing offensive performance here against the Raiders.
Mm-hmm. Are you concerned at all about Tyreek Hill's hand injury?
Anytime guys come back in the game and they're able to play, I feel like it's fine. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just disappointing about A-Chain. I don't have anything to add to what you said.
Yeah. The Waddle thing was striking to me, man. It was like he's only going to be featured when Tyreek is out. That's what it felt like to me. I still think he can play. I mean, he was wide open for like a 30 or 40-yard gain easily. Tua sailed it and missed him. But by the way, Tyreek is now on pace for 2,077 yards this season. Wild, wild stuff. Patriots will come out of their bye to play at the Giants and Mr. DeVito. They're saying, and if you can believe this, in week 12, they're holding an open quarterback competition in camp, are the Patriots, between Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, and Will Grier. Doesn't look like Will Grier is going to be in the mix. Thorman came into the chat and mentioned that it didn't sound like Will Grier is going to be ready, so it will either be Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi. I'm not sure it matters. If I'm the Patriots, I'd probably just want to get a look at Zappi and give him a chance here, but I don't think it really matters generally for fantasy. Evan, any thoughts on Patriots as they come out of their bye?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who it's going to be either. They could play them both at this point. I'm with you. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Ramondre Stevenson's back tightened up before the bye, so that might be something to monitor on the injury report as we head into week 12. Devontae Parker could come back from his concussion and throw another wrench into the receiver rotation. They had started to use in their game previous to the bye, they used a three tight end rotation of Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, and Pharaoh Brown. This offense sucks.
Last one we're going to do here today is indeed the Tennessee Titans. I can't remember a team only running 38 plays in a game. I mean, it happens from time to time, but 38 plays, an average team runs somewhere between 60 and 65 typically in a game. 38 plays for the Titans is unbelievable. But Levis only threw it 17 times and they lose 34-14. I mean, this was like a total disaster for the Titans. I guess the only good news is they're home against the Panthers on Sunday, an actual good matchup. But yeah, this was inept performance from Titans offense. Evan, any thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, they can't pass protect. Will Levis is, he's a second-round rookie who barely got any reps, even in practice until about 4 weeks ago when he started playing. He had 17 pass attempts in this game. Only 2 of them traveled more than 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. So if you started DeAndre Hopkins, you were very fortunate that he came out of this with 4 for 59 and a touchdown, because nobody else did anything in the offense, which also isn't surprising when your offense only runs 38 plays. I saw someone in the Discord suggest that maybe Derrick Henry is a good buy low. This schedule coming up is pretty nice, beginning with Carolina. I thought that was interesting to throw out there. I don't trust the offense, so there's absolutely major risk here that Derrick Henry, has these games where, like, when they fall behind, he's screwed
for sure.
But
schedule certainly good. Certainly good. We've known that for a while on Derrick Henry. All right, that is going to do it for this Thanksgiving week edition of the Team by Team Pods. Again, if you're interested in the Thanksgiving slate, free on YouTube. Establish the Million will be up Tuesday evening. and establish the show free on YouTube for the Thanksgiving slate, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. For Evan, for producer Luke, for producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.